Good morning, students. Have a nice day. Today, we are going to learn about state and society in India, from the Cholas to the Mughals. Students, the history of India can be divided prehistoric period, Bronze Age, Iron Age, classical and medieval, and modern period. In this lesson, we are going to learn about India's position during medieval period. Through this lesson, we are going to know about successive dynasties and the resultant political outcomes from the first times of the Cholas to the Mughals, and to know about the influence of Islam and the Islamic State on socio-cultural life of the people, and to understand the institutions and administrative changes during Chola, Pandya and Vijayanagar in the south. Now, let's go to the lesson. Introduction. The medieval period of India broadly classified into two periods. The early medieval period from the 7th century to 12th century AD, and late medieval period started from the 12th century to beginning of Mughal rule in the 16th century AD. The Mughal period from 16th century to 18th century AD referred as early modern period of India. The political scenario in all parts of India underwent momentous definitive changes which transformed the social and economic fabric and development of the country. Major political changes. The Chola period of South India also classified into two categories: early Chola period and later or Imperial Chola period. The Imperial Chola dynasty was founded by Vijayalaya Chola and their capital was Palayarai. The expansion of the Chola Empire from the time of Rajaraja I, which eclipsed the Pandyas and Pallava kingdom, extending north till Orissa, and from the 12th century AD onwards, Turco-Mongol Muslim empires began to establish themselves throughout the subcontinent, including the Delhi Sultanate and Mughal Empire, who adopted local culture and intermarried with the natives, and extending throughout North India to spread of Islam the different parts of the country. By the end of the 13th century AD, the eclipse of the great empire of the Cholas and the consequent rise of many religious kingdoms in South India. Students, I would like to share one more information. The last king of Chola Empire, Rajendra Chola III, was defeated by Jadavarman Sundarapandyan. The consolidation of Muslim rule under the Mughals in the north beginning in 1526 AD with the defeat of the Ibrahim Lodi. The Mughal Empire extended from Kabul to Gujarat to Bengal and Kashmir to South India. In India, Muslim dynasties was established by Muhammad Ghori. The coming of the Europeans beginning with the Portuguese, who carried on the west coast of India in 1498. Students, why did the Europeans try to finding a sea route to India? Because in 1453 AD, the Ottoman Turks captured Constantinople from Roman Empire. Constantinople was the capital city of Roman Empire. Ottoman captured the Constantinople and closed the route to Southeast Asia. Then political changes, 1080 to 1700 AD. North India, the advent of Islam. In India, Muslim rule was established by Muhammad of Ghori in Delhi at the end of the 12th century AD. end of the 12th century AD. Arab Muslims merchants had been trading in the ports of the west coast, especially Kerala, as early as the 9th century. Similarly, Muslim invaders from West Asia had set up sultanates in Gujarat and Sindh since the 8th century AD. The impact of Muslim rule was felt during the reign of Alauddin Khalji, who sent military campaigns to the south. Devagiri was captured by Alauddin Khalji. He renamed Daulatabad. It was a second stronghold. It was a second stronghold of his growing kingdom. Malik Kafur. Malik Kafur was the slave and general of Alauddin Khalji. He was sent on military expeditions further south in the first decade of the 1300s AD. First decade of the 1300 AD. Muhammad bin Tughlaq, the founder of Tughlaq dynasty. During the reign of Muhammad bin Tughlaq, there was a revolt in Daulatabad. Alauddin Bahman Shah set up the Bahmani Sultanate in 1347 AD with his capital in Bidar. The Bahmani kingdom survived for nearly 150 years, mainly due to the able administration of Muhammad Gawan, a great statesman and loyal minister. After his death, many viceroys declared their independence, and by the end of the 15th century, 5 sultanates came up in the Deccan. There are Bijapur, Golconda, Ahmednagar, Berar and Bidar. Bijapur and Golconda were the largest of these sultanates, and the region entered a phase of considerable economic growth and expansion of trade. Then the Deccan sultanates were conquered by Aurangzeb in 1660 AD, and the entire reign as far south as Madras became a part of the Mughal Empire. Then the Chola Empire in the south. The Chola dynasty was divided into 2 categories: early Chola period and medieval or imperial Chola period. The Chola dynasty was a Tamil thalassocratic empire of southern India. One of the longest ruling dynasties in the world's history. The earliest datable references to the Chola are in inscriptions from the 3rd century BCE left by Asoka of the Maurya Empire. As one of the 3 crowned kings of Tamilagam, along with the Chera and Pandya, the dynasty continued to govern over varying territory until 13th century CE. CE means Common Era. BCE means before Common Era. Despite these ancient origins, the period when it is appropriate to speak of a Chola Empire only begins with the medieval Cholas in the mid-9th century CE. The Imperial Chola or medieval Chola Empire was founded by Vijayalaya Chola and his capital Palayare and Urayur. Now it is located in Trichy. Vijayalaya founded the Chola dynasty, but the territorial expansion of the Chola Empire began under the Rajaraja I. The original name of Rajaraja I was Arulmozhivarman, and his period was called as Golden Age of Cholas. He was also known as Mummadi Cholan and Rajakesari. The Pallava kingdom had already been assimilated into the Chola kingdom. The Pandya kingdom remained independent but was subservient to the Cholas. The empire expanded further under Rajendra I, son of Rajaraja Chola, who had successfully taken his armies as far to the northeast as the river Ganges, and captured Gangetic regions. And he also captured Sailendra kingdom of Srivijaya, Kadaram and Ceylon. After conquest of Ganga and Kadaram, Rajendra I referred as Gangayum Kadaramum Kondan. Ceylon remained a province of the Chola Empire for a few decades. The empire was further consolidated through marriage with the eastern Chalukya under Rajendra's grandson Kulothunga I, and extended up to the border of Orissa. Maritime trade with Southeast Asia and China expanded greatly. Maritime trade with Southeast Asia and China expanded greatly during the Chola period. The continued interaction with Tamil merchants resulted in the spread of the influence of Indic culture and art into Southeast Asia, as seen in the magnificent temple of Angkor Wat in Cambodia. That is the largest Hindu temple, one of the largest Hindu temple of the world. Then Vijayanagara and South India after the Cholas. The Chola Empire started to decline. After the middle of the 13th century. The last Chola emperor was known as Rajendra III. He died in 1279 AD. Further to the north was the Hoysala kingdom with its capital at Belur and later Halebeedu. This kingdom extended much of the present day state of Karnataka. The Kagadiyas ruled from Warangal. Warangal, now it called Telangana. And Yadavas ruled in Devagiri until Devagiri fell in Alauddin Khalji's forces at the end of the 13th century AD. The establishment of the kingdom of Vijayanagar was the most momentous development in the history of South India. The Vijayanagar kingdom established by Harigara and Bukka. They were two brothers, and the new capital city was founded on the banks of Tungabhadra, which they named Vijayanagara. Harigara was crowned in 1336 AD. The Sangama dynasty ruled by Vijayanagar more than 150 years. And then Vijayanagar kingdom ruled by Tuluva and Salva dynasties. The important ruler of Vijayanagar kingdom was Krishnadevaraya. The empire extended kingdoms to the south, such as the Hoysalas and Tamil region. Were also assimilated. Finally, the combined forces of 5 Deccani Sultanates defeated the Vijayanagar in 1565 AD at the Battle of Talakota. The Vijayanagar emperors then shifted their capital. Further south to Venugonda and eventually to Chandragiri near Tirupati. Finally, the Vijayanagar kingdom declined middle of the 17th century AD. Then Mughal empires 1526 AD to 1707 AD. The Mughal Empire or Mughal Empire, self-designated as Gurgani, was an early modern empire that controlled much of South Asia between the 16th century to 19th century AD. 19th century AD. The Mughal Empire was founded by Babur in 1526 AD after he defeated Ibrahim Lodi at Panipat. The first six Mughals are referred to as the Great Mughals. The first six Mughals emperors are referred to as the Great Mughals. There are the Babur, the Humayun, the Akbar, the Jahangir, the Shah Jahan, and the Aurangzeb. Aurangzeb was the last of the Great Mughals. Akbar consolidated the Mughal Empire through conquest and through a policy of conciliation with the religious based kingdoms of Rajasthan. The Mughal Empire though began to disintegrate after Aurangzeb continued to exist nominally till 1857 AD, when the British finally entered virtually non-existent empire. The last king of Mughal Empire was Bahadur Shah II. The Maratha Empire or the Maratha Confederacy was a power that dominated a large portion of the Indian subcontinent in the 18th century AD. A new power center rose in Maharashtra in the 17th century, and the Marathas under the leadership of Shivaji seriously undermined the authority of the Mughals in western India. At its height, the empire stretched over most of the Indian subcontinent. Then the arrival of the Europeans. During the 15th century, the Europeans were preoccupied with trying to find a direct sea route to India, bypassing the overland route through West Asia and the Mediterranean Sea. 1453 ஆட்டோமன் துருக்கியர்களால் கான்ஸ்டாண்டினோபிள் கைப்பற்றப்பட்டு அதன் நிலவழி அடைக்கப்பட்டதால் யூரோப்பியர்கள் இந்தியாவிற்கும் தென்கிழக்கு ஆசிய நாடுகளுக்கும் புதிய நேரடி கடல் வழியை கண்டுபிடிப்பதில் தீவிரமாய் ஈடுபட்டிருந்தனர். The spice trade from India was controlled by Muslims up to Alexandria. இந்தியாவிலிருந்து நடைபெறும் நறுமணப் பொருட்களின் வணிகம் அலெக்சாண்ட்ரியா நகரம் வரை முஸ்லிம்களின் கட்டுப்பாட்டின் கீழ் இருந்தது. By gaining direct access to India, the Europeans could exercise more direct control over the spice trade and obtain the spices at more favorable prices. இந்தியாவுடன் நேரடி தொடர்பை ஏற்படுத்திக் கொள்வதன் மூலம் ஐரோப்பியர்கள் நறுமணப் பொருட்களின் வணிகத்தை தங்களுடைய கட்டுப்பாட்டில் கொண்டு வரலாம் என எண்ணினர். In 1498 AD, Vasco da Gama landed on the Kerala coast, having sailed around the Cape of Good Hope in South Africa. புதிய கடல் வழியை கண்டுபிடிப்பதற்காக போர்ச்சுகல் நாட்டின் லிஸ்பனிலிருந்து 1497 வாஸ்கோடா காமா என்பவர் தென்னாப்பிரிக்காவின் நன்னம்பிக்கை முனை கேப் ஆஃப் குட் ஹோப் நன்னம்பிக்கை முனையை கடந்து 1498 கேரளா கடற்கரையை வந்து அடைந்தார். Barely 5 years later, the Portuguese built the first fort at Cochin in 1503 AD. 5 ஆண்டுகளுக்கு பின்னர் 1503 போர்ச்சுகீசியர்கள் கொச்சியில் தங்கள் முதல் கோட்டையை கட்டினர். Goa was captured in 1510 AD and became the center of the Portuguese state in India. 1510 கோவா கைப்பற்றப்பட்டு இந்தியாவில் போர்ச்சுகீசிய அரசின் மையமாக மாறியது. கோவா போர்ச்சுகீசிய அரசின் மையமாக மாறியது. In South India, however, political authority was fragmented. And much less cohesive, and they had their own enclaves over which they exercised complete authority. The Dutch were in Pulicat, the English in Madras, the French in Puducherry, and the Danes in Danish. தென்னிந்தியாவில் வலுவான அரசுகள் இல்லாததால் ஐரோப்பிய நாடுகளின் வணிக நிறுவனங்கள் தங்களுக்கென்று சொந்தமான வணிக தளங்களை ஏற்படுத்தி கொண்டு அவற்றில் முழு அதிகாரம் செலுத்தின. எடுத்துக்காட்டாக புலிக்காட் மற்றும் நாகப்பட்டினத்தில் தச்சுக்காரர்களும், மெட்ராஸில் ஆங்கிலேயர்களும், பாண்டிச்சேரியில் பிரெஞ்சுக்காரர்களும், தரங்கம்பாடியில் டேனியர்களும் தங்களது ஆட்சி அதிகாரத்தை நிலைநிறுத்தி கொண்டனர். Thank you students. Thank you for watching the video.